All right. Now I want to yell at you guys. It's a little crooked. I don't know what you're doing with SAQs, but it's making me really mad. Except the love of my life. Gianni Miller. So, Gianni just freaking killed it. Thank God he has to take the exam now, so that's good. But, Gianni, do you do TEA? Do you do the T thing?
I don't think so.
I think you do. I think you do. I think that, like, it's literally perfect.
I don't do it on purpose.
Oh. And then some of you just completely disregard that there's an acronym whatsoever. How many of you did regurgitate the prompt like you're supposed to? Hey, all of you that are not, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's literally a recipe, like a cake mix, to know exactly how to do it. You regurgitate the prompt, then you provide your evidence, and then what? Malia's laughing. I don't even know why. Look, it's a little crooked. I'll just stand like this. It's not okay. You have to make that connection. You've got to do a topic, sentence, evidence, and then connect the two. I have some of you that are writing one sentence. Okay, congrats, you fail. Okay, you fail. There's literally an attempt here to try to get college credit. I'm trying to teach you exactly how to get college credit. Exactly. Give the evidence. I can only guess that you're not because you don't know the answer. I thought this was a really easy SAQ test. I thought it was really easy. And then I'm reading stuff, I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then you have no specific details. You just sort of say random, like, general things. You're going to fail for that. You are going to fail for that. Some of you are getting really low scores. That's a problem. That's a problem. When we go over them, I'm going to grade them over break, and I'm going to grade your DBQs over break. DBQs and SAQs are on this quarter. So all of you that have barely an 80%, we'll find out whether you stay that way. Everybody needs to have an 80% in my class. Everybody. It is unacceptable for you to be in this room and to not have an 80%. It is unacceptable. You can retake quizzes. Asia, it's supposed to be free money. Yes? Those are supposed to be free money. Map quizzes are supposed to be free money. And how many of you agree it is kind of good that you at least know where friggin' Tajikistan is and you know where the countries of the earth are when we're talking about these countries, that you can at least picture what we're talking about. So, all right. I'm done scolding for now, but I was a little bit discontented with the papers that I have graded so far. And if I remember correctly, it's your class. I haven't graded third block at all yet. It is your class. We've graded about 6 papers, and I love that kid. I love that kid. The rest of you, you have work to do. Any questions? Anybody have any concerns? Because I thought it was supposed to be easier than that. And apparently it wasn't. Nobody? Moving on. 1750 to 1900. I'm trying to be unfrustrated, unexasperated. 1750 to 1900, it is the third time period. As you notice that we have now only 150 years, that we started off with 550 years. Am I doing the math right? Oh no, 1200 to 1450. We started off at 250. And then what, we had 300? 1450, 1750, then we had 300 years. And now we're down to 150 years. And then the next time period after that is 3 units, all for 100 years, all for just the 20th century. So Here's the grand scheme of everything. Everybody look at me. There's nothing else to see. Everybody look at me. There's nothing else to be looking at. The grand scheme of this. Industrial revolution, industrial revolution, industrial revolution. Do you hear me? There's nothing more significant than the industrial revolution. There's one thing that was more significant. What was it called? The agricultural revolution. Say it this big kid way. The Neolithic revolution. When we stopped hunting and gathering and started doing settled agriculture. The Neolithic revolution in 8000 BCE is the number one most momentous. Why is it the most momentous?
Because it's when we stopped.
Say it again, Jason.
That's when everyone was like made civilizations.
So?
Cities.
Why is it so momentous? Somebody knows.
We wouldn't exist right here, right now.
That's true.
It started culture, economics, and government, everything.
Most significantly, we started hurting our earth. Number one thing is we started hurting our earth. FYI, settled agriculture, some of you know that was slash and burn agriculture, originally, but we started hurting our earth. So here's what my point is that before settled agriculture, all of you guys looked like this, right? For 250 years, Paige really looked like that, right? I really looked like this. We were really out there just hunting and gathering, you guys, for 250,000 years. We are only 10,000 years from that. 8,000 BCE to us now is 10,023 years. How many people know we're close to destroying our earth now? We are close to destroying our earth. How many people within hundreds of years you think it'll be too hot, it'll be too incapable of sustaining life, right? That's why Bezos and all those guys are trying to what? Go to Mars, make space stations to go other places. They're really, really trying to do it. So do you understand that like in just 10,000 years, we have so horrifically damaged our earth that it might not exist in the next few hundred years? I mean, the earth, I think, is going to exist. It's going to exist, I think. But then it's going to take millions of years after it gets rid of us, the parasite. How many people think we are a parasite on the earth? When it gets rid of us, then it maybe will hopefully regenerate, hopefully the moons, hopefully no asteroids, anything like that. But so for 250 years, but I mean, people, humans, Neanderthals, Cro-Magnon, human-like people have happened for millions, I don't know about your religion, but millions of years in theory, hundreds and thousands of years looking like this. And then now the second most momentous thing is the Industrial Revolution. And what is the difference? What did we invent? Thomas Newcomen, I call him Satan. Thomas Newcomen invented, I think in 1769, what? The steam engine. Who's going to make it better? It's how we talk about the electricity in the outlet. What's his name? Watt. Watts. So what's the first name? James Watt. James Watt refined it. So before, Thomas Newcomen made a steam engine for us to get water out of wells, right? Or out of mines and coal mines and everything else, to get the water out of there, because obviously when storms would happen, then it would just fill up all of these places and they'd have to get the water out. But Thomas Newcomen is the one that came up with the steam engine, but then James Watt is the one that refined it well enough that it started being able to be used for absolutely anything. What's the very first industrial revolution is in what place? Great Britain. And then what are they going to make? Textiles. What's the second industrial revolution and when is it? 1880s, 1870s, 1880s is the second industrial revolution. Put it down if you don't know. The second industrial revolution, because it is momentous. And what do we make? Steel. And it is equally momentous. Can I have a tissue from behind you, please? We make steel in the 1880s. And so this steam engine uses what? What does it use? Coal. And now today, what do we still use? Not just coal, but oil. One more. Natural gas. They are called collectively fossil fuels. And that has done what to us, ruining our world? Just ratcheted it up so that in the last 250 years we have been on hyper speed, absolutely decimating our earth. Here's what you should know. I'm 60. I am 60 years old. And when I got my license when I was 16, however many is that, 44 years? 44 years ago, I drove cars that use gasoline. What do you drive? You drive cars that use gasoline. I promise you, when I'm long since dead, you will not drive cars with gasoline when you are 60. Who knows it's true? Why, Dalton?
Electric cars.
I mean, that's still coal.
We'll run out.
It is literally a finite resource. Right now, we're going to Canada and getting what they call tar sands, which is incredibly not efficient, trying to get the oil from the sands in the tar and not get the sand in the oil. How many people know that'd destroy your car if there was sand in oil? Like, getting that out is absolutely horrible. In the 1860s, I think is the beginning of the oil boom. And how did we get oil? It literally flew out of the ground. Who knows what I'm talking about? We had the oil derricks, and then we drilled for oil, and then what? It would literally shoot into the sky. And that's not a thing anymore. That's not how we get oil anymore. It is a finite resource and is going away. What about coal? It's a finite resource. Natural gas, it's a finite resource. Baby boomers, FYI, the most significant thing I can teach you is I need you to not vote for us. Stop voting for us. We have done a horrible job being the guardians of your earth, right? How many people, like, it's not, the legacy we're leaving you isn't good. Stop voting for us. Get people in there and start figuring out how to have renewable energies that can populate and electrify your earth. One of my favorite things that I ever saw was somewhere, maybe the Netherlands. They've made roads that are solar panels. Isn't that crazy? Roads that are solar panels. And that as you drive on the road, there's a thing underneath your car that has something to do with whatever the technology is below the road that's being electrified from the solar panels. And it literally goes into your car and regenerates your car as you drive on that. And so in my mind, if they can do that in the Netherlands, what? The whole world could theoretically do it. I mean, I think Musk, Tesla, who's that guy?
Tesla.
Am I saying the right name?
Yeah.
Musk. He had solar panels. Shingles. Shingles that are solar panels. Shingles. How many of you? Genius. Genius. Not just solar panels that can fly off last week. They can fly off your house and get ripped off of your house. But actual shingles. Most of us, our house still has the shingles. But the shingles are actual solar panels. So the ability to do it, how many of you? I think it exists currently. Or you think it exists currently? I believe it exists currently. So, yes, I need to get going, and yes, we have to talk about all of these things, but I am also trying to teach you just as a human about what we have done that is so awful and terrible in the past that needs to be undone in the future if you want to have any semblance of a normal world. I assure you, you won't be driving cars with gasoline when you're 60. Because what about the population? Yeah, I mean, again, I was born in 1960, and that 62, but nonetheless, in 1960, 2.5 billion on the earth, 2.5. 2.5, and I'm only 60, and 2.5 billion. What is it today? 8. I think it's just over 8 now. I think we're just a smidge over 8. So more than tripled in my 60 years. So if that's you guys, what? You, by the way, are around the year 2000, and the year 2000 was how many? How many billion? Did somebody say it?
6.
It's 6. It was 6. Around the year 2000 was 6. And so if it triples in your lifetime, by the time you're 60, what?
14.
In theory, 18. How many people, if we're already at 8, it's not going to be 18, right? But can this earth have a carrying capacity of 18 billion people? You'd have to have the resources. Do you think you could do it?
Maybe.
Maybe. Who knows that a lot of wars and a lot of death and a lot of destruction, maybe the 4 horsemen, who are they? Death, famine, disease, and war. Who thinks that will make it so it won't be 18? Does anybody think that's going to prevent 18. I don't see you having 18 billion people on this earth when you're 60. I don't see it happening. I don't know how. Like, in theory, China and India, what about their populations? They're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but do they have space for the more people that they theoretically would have? They don't even have like the literal space. Back to the four horsemen, what? Death, war, famine, disease. Anyway, all right, so we're going to jump off really fast. Right now we start with the Enlightenment. The most important thing you have to know is that the number one words that you have to know equals progress and reason for the scientific revolution. So write it down if you have not. Scientific revolution, who's the most famous person of the scientific revolution? Isaac Newton is the most famous person from the scientific revolution. There are a lot of them. If you ever took AP Euro, you'd have to know all of the people from the scientific revolution. Remember, we talked about Galileo, Isaac Newton. I mean, there's so many. And now, progress and reason. And now we're going to talk about the Enlightenment. And so the Enlightenment are using the ideas of progress and reason and applying them to societies. Everybody hear me? Applying progress and reason to societies. What happens to religious belief during the Enlightenment? It declines. It declines. It didn't help that at one point we had 3 popes. What do I mean? Then we have Catholics and they're like, no, this is the true religion. And then we had Protestants, so like, no, screw them. The real religion is Protestant, Puritans, Presbyterian, you know what I mean? We have all sorts of, then we had 2 popes, then we had 3 popes, right? We have Islam, we have Shiite, we have Sunni, all of the different religions. By the time we get to the Enlightenment, there's a dramatic decline in religious thought because of the scientific revolution, and then certainly into the Enlightenment. If you don't know, write it down. You have to know that our founding fathers were called deists. D-E-I-S-T. What does this mean, deists?
They believe that a higher power just created the universe, and what would it be?
That a power created the universe? And then what?
They just,
Oh, hands off. Yes. And then hands off. Hands off. They talk about it like the clock. They talk about God as a clockmaker, that he puts the world in motion and then what?
Let's it go.
Right? I don't have to keep touching my clock. It's just going to keep going with or without me. So that's what deists are. And all of our founding fathers were deists. There might be a few that were not, but most of them were deists. This is during the Enlightenment, most of the people were deists. They believed that there was a God, but that he didn't participate. I also have that thing. I don't think that anybody cared whether, I don't think your God believed that Kansas City Chiefs should be, who did they play?
Eagles.
The Eagles. Who won? Chiefs. Right? I don't think that how many people think your God's not micromanaging that? Anybody? It's not determining who's going to win the football game or anything like that. So deist is that, but on steroids, that God's not micromanaging anything. That he started the earth, and then it's going. All right, Enlightenment. Go ahead. Can you still see me? I'm going to go like this a little bit. So you can see that. Okay, I think that's good. Explain the intellectual and ideological context in which revolution swept the Atlantic world from 1750 to 1900. Explain how the Enlightenment affected societies over time. Go ahead. Enlightenment, progress and reason, the ideas of the scientific revolution placed on what? Say the word. Societies. Roots of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was an intellectual and cultural movement where philosophers studied human society scientifically. Why do we say philosophers?
That's what they call it.
Because the heart of this is in what country?
France.
France. The heart of this is in France. So studying society scientifically, like the scientific revolution. FYI, these are called salons. This picture that we keep seeing, they're called salons, and usually there's a lady of the house that is running the salon. And so, you guys, there are newspapers, but there's not TV, there's not radio, there's not anything like that. They didn't have lecture halls. The richest and famous people in Paris would hold these salons, and they talked about scientific ideas, and they talked about Enlightenment ideas about how to run society in a better, more efficient, more effective way. And so, who are we trying to lean away from? Louis the 14th. What are they called?
Well,
Divine right, absolute monarchs. And we're going to shift from absolute monarchs to enlightened monarchs. FYI, Catherine the Great is an enlightened monarch, and she destroyed the crap out of who? He was on the DBQ. Pugachev, right? And then destroyed the serfs after that. So she wasn't so enlightened. So people that were theoretically called enlightened were still not necessarily enlightened. Go ahead. The Renaissance spirit of inquiry, scientific revolution, scientific study of society, and the Protestant Reformation, which weakened the church. Remember, the whole religious wars for 150 years in Europe put a very big stain on any kind of church, and so it loosened the power of churches on governments. Remember that Napoleon's going to do it in the future. The French did it. The Spanish did it. What about who appoints cardinals and bishops and archbishops? It wasn't the church anymore like it was during the Italian Renaissance. Who appointed them? The king. The king did, because what did he want? And remember what that's called with an S? Simony. He wanted to get paid for appointing these prelates, 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 people that have to do with the church. So that gave the power to the kings over the church. Go ahead. The philosophes believed reason, informed thinking should not be influenced by intolerance, bigotry, and superstition. Superstition is exactly talking about what? Religion. It's exactly talking about religion. They're saying that there's all sorts of superstitions in religions. So it was a direct assault on religion. Go ahead. Enlightenment philosophers utilized the scientific method to seek empirical truth. Empiricism is the belief that knowledge comes through experience. How many of you know this empiricism word? It means that you're doing an experiment. It means you're doing an experiment in science class. The experimental method is this word empiricism, so write it down. If you see this word, and you are going to see this word on the test, empiricism literally just means experiment. Empirical evidence. So you want to know about one of my most famous experiments that I did in a psychology class? You want to hear it? I think it's psychology. I think it's a psychology class. I was already a teacher. It was like my second or third year of teaching. And we had to do an experiment. And so just any kind of experiment, I don't know what it was. I guess psychology, I don't know. But I did an experiment on whether drinking and driving really affects your, what is it called? Your cognitive abilities. And so I bought a keg of beer. And then I had all of my friends come over, leave their keys. They had to spend the night. And then I timed them, and they had to drink a certain amount of beer like every 20 minutes or something like that. And they had to play the little video game, driving a car, right? They had to drive a car with a video game, so they get drunk and drunk and drunk and drunk. And then I just kept testing them at different intervals throughout the night. They had to get tested. Guess what I proved without a doubt? What I proved? Somebody say something. Oh no, I proved without a doubt that you should drink and drive. 100% I proved that you should drink and drive. Literally everybody did better on the driving test by the end of the night. And I was like, I think something's really wrong here. Like, what's happening? Everybody's really good at driving now. Like, I don't know what to do. So what I do when I turn in my paper? Most certainly not. I turned in my paper and I said, I approve beyond a shadow of a doubt that you should drink and drive. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but I have definitive data. And then I showed my experimental method, my everything, the experimental method. That's empiricism. I showed it all. And then does anybody know, she replied, and she was like, no, good for you. Good for you. That is right. You did this exactly correct. But you've proven that different thing that you didn't realize is the only problem is you proved something else. What was more significant than drinking? What they do all night long? Okay, so what was more, who's talking? What was more significant?
Learning how to play the game.
That's right. The repetition of having played the game, because everybody walked in, they hadn't played the video game that I had given them. And so the first time they did it, what? They're like crashing into everything. And then the next time they got better, and then they got better. And so by the end of the night, drunk or not, they were like, oh, I got this. They were doing great. So I proved that you should drink and drive. It was wrong. It was wrong. I did not prove that. I proved that what? Repetition was more significant than the factor of drinking. So anyway, experimental method, the scientific method, all of these words are empiricism. Empiricism, the empirical method, the experimental method, what I did, that experiment and putting down all of the factors and everything is empiricism, is studying. And then the good news is that people like me mess up, and then what do we find out? What was wrong with the experiment, so then people that would be after me would theoretically what? They would have to tweak that to try to find out how to test this better. Go ahead. The philosophers believe natural laws regulate both the universe and human society and can be discovered by human reason. Natural law, we're going to have people that are going to be called natural philosophers. Natural philosophers are what we today call scientists. So put it down. If you don't know that, make sure you know that when you get to the test, that if they talk about natural philosophers, they're actually talking about scientists. They are philosophers who study what? Nature. Natural philosophers. They study nature. Go ahead. They believed happiness was an inalienable human right. So John Locke is going to say to the British that people should have life, liberty, and what? What do you, paternity you're saying?
Something else.
That's Jefferson. Property. John Locke from England says that people should have life, liberty, and property. Guess what Americans did? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That is not your right to have property, because guess who they wanted to have property? All the wealthiest people. All the wealthiest. The people, not even just white, but what?
Rich.
Middle and upper classes. So we even took that out from our founding fathers. They took out, Thomas Jefferson took out property like they had with John Locke in London, and they replaced it with pursuit of happiness. Come on, man. Go ahead. That's our inalienable rights. The philosophers, you have to know these people. You have to know. Philosophers, Enlightenment, philosophers, Enlightenment, philosophers, Enlightenment. The philosophers are the first Europeans to believe in social progress, that the discovery of laws of economics and government would inevitably improve society. Progress and reason placed on societies. That's what the Enlightenment is. Go ahead. They viewed intellectual freedom as a right. The freedom of expression allows for progress. Again, like if you were taking AP Euro, there are 40 philosophers that you would have to know, just like there are scientists that you would have to know from the scientific revolution. Go ahead. Here you just kind of have to know the whole basic understanding of it. The philosophers opposed restrictions on speech, religion, and trade, and wanted these limitations on human liberty removed. Who has to be removed to get that to happen? Absolute monarchs. They can literally what? Point at you and say, that's it. You're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. That's it. So absolute monarchy is going out with whom? Say the person. We're getting to the end of absolute monarchs with whom? Louis the 14th. Louis the 15th, Louis the 16th, they try to be absolute monarchs, but it's not possible. They need tax money. Louis the 14th spent way too much money. They have debts. Go ahead. The Enlightenment saw the philosophers question authority of absolute rulers of religion and tradition. Why religion?
They can't prove it.
First son and second son. A lot of those people are what? Absolute rulers, right? The Pope, the bishops, the archbishops, whatever they say goes, and that's starting to wane when you get to the Enlightenment. The power of the church is starting to wane. Again, we had a time where the Catholic Church had 3 popes. In 1517, we have a huge schism between whom? Catholics and Protestants. Go ahead. So, most philosophers are French, but they were across Europe and in the American colonies as well. Many of our founding fathers are also considered philosophers. Go ahead. Okay. In 1651, Thomas Hobbes wrote Leviathan, arguing humans are naturally selfish and violent, and only the fear of an absolute ruler makes society possible. put his name down. His name is Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes, what is it, 1651? And it's called Leviathan. So what you have to know about Hobbes is he means, that's conservative, conservative, conservative. Oh, we have to start it over again?